When the war ended in 1945, Japan was a shadow of its former self. 2 atomic bombs had scorched its cities. Its navy lay sunken at the bottom of the sea. The once expanding empire was no more, its flag stripped of meaning. Factories were silent, rail lines twisted, millions were displaced, and food was scarce. Worst of all, Japan's ability to defend itself was stripped away under Allied occupation. After World War II, the supreme commander of the Allied powers ceased all military manufacturing and development plants in Japan, resulting in Japan losing the technology needed to build and manufacture tanks and armored vehicles. For the first time in its long, often bloody history, Japan was not a warrior nation. It was a nation of survivors. The Constitution, drafted under occupation, forbade war as a tool of policy. Article 9 declared Japan would never maintain land, sea, and air forces, or any other war potential. But history does not wait for idealism. By the early 1950s, the Cold War had frozen the globe in paranoia and power politics. Communist China rose. North Korea invaded the South with Soviet tanks. American soldiers bled just across the sea. The US realized a pacifist Japan could become a strategic liability. Due to the outbreak of the Korean War, SCAP ordered Japan to remilitarize, forming armed forces and providing American surplus tanks such as the M4A3E8 Sherman and the M24 Chaffee to the newly formed self-defense forces. The M24, though popular among Japanese crews, was inadequate when facing Soviet T-34-85s, as seen in Korea. In 1954, Japan raised the Japan Ground Self-Defense Force, a military in name only, dedicated to defensive protection. Japan needed tanks. At first, American surplus tanks like the M4 Sherman and M24 Chaffee filled the gap, but these machines were ill-suited to Japan's terrain, too wide, too light, or undergunned. As the tanks in JGSDF service at the time were obsolete or inadequate, the JGSDF was presented with a choice: purchase the new American-built M46 pattern and later the M47 pattern, or develop a domestic main battle tank. Due to the high cost of purchasing American-made tanks, and because the M47 didn't meet their requirements, the JGSDF chose to develop their own tank. This marked the return of domestic tank production in Japan after a 10-year blank. In 1955, Japan launched the STA program. Mitsubishi and other engineers, many veterans of imperial designs, resurrected tank production. 4 prototypes were made in total. The STA-1 prototype appeared in 1956, a sleek, low-slung tank with a 90mm gun borrowed from American designs. STA-1 was the first prototype built based on requested specifications. Because it adopted a rear engine, front drive system, a shaft lay at the bottom of the hull, raising the vehicle's overall height. To keep the height down, designers placed the turret ring lower than the engine deck, which led to a longer hull and a 7-road wheel configuration. The STA-2 followed in 1957, shorter, more compact, and better suited to Japan's narrow roads and fragile bridges. STA-2 was built alongside STA-1, with simultaneous progress. Its hull was shortened, and the upper profile was flattened. The JGSDF conducted field trials with both prototypes and placed strong emphasis on mobility in deep mud due to Japan's many paddy fields. STA-2 demonstrated superior mobility and was chosen as the base design. STA-3 introduced experimental technologies, including a semi-automatic loading system for the main gun and a remotely operated anti-aircraft machine gun. However, these systems lacked proven reliability in real-world operations and exceeded cost limitations, so they were omitted in the next prototype. STA-4 was the closest prototype to what would become the Type 61. Several experimental devices were dropped, but the engine saw modest improvements. Its anti-aircraft machine gun was enclosed in an armored housing resembling a sealed shell, but this design was ultimately not adopted in the production model. Lessons from these prototypes formed the foundation for what would come next. In 1961, production began on the Type 61, Japan's first post-war tank. Weighing 35 tons, armed with a licensed 90mm rifled gun, and powered by a 570-horsepower Mitsubishi diesel engine, it balanced mobility with firepower. Armor thickness topped out at 55mm on the turret front, angled to deflect hits from small arms and light anti-tank weapons. Speeds reached 45 km/h with a 200-kilometer operational range. The crew of 4 operated a tank with simple fire controls, no stabilization or laser rangefinders initially. Between 1961 and 1975, 560 Type 61s were produced. By 1990, 400 remained active, shrinking to 190 by 1995. The Type 61 was fully retired by 2000 after 39 years of service. By the late 1960s, Soviet tanks like the T-62 and T-64 outclassed the Type 61. Japan answered with the STB project. The Type 74 entered service in 1975, equipped with a 105mm L7 gun, hydropneumatic suspension capable of kneeling and leaning, laser rangefinder, ballistic computer, and later infrared and thermal sights. Weighing 38 tons, it was designed for Japan's rugged terrain and urban environments. Between 1975 and 1988, 873 units were produced. In 1990, about 822 remained active, declining gradually as newer tanks arrived. The Type 74 was retired from active service in March 2024. The Cold War demanded a new generation of tank. Japan's Type 90 emerged in 1990, a third-generation main battle tank on par with the M1 Abrams and Leopard 2. It mounted a licensed 120mm Rheinmetall L44 smoothbore gun and featured a 3-man crew with a Bustle autoloader. Advanced fire control systems included thermal imaging, laser range-finding, and hunter-killer capability. Powered by a 1,500-horsepower Mitsubishi 10ZG diesel engine, it reached speeds above 70 km/h. Its hydropneumatic suspension gave superior cross-country mobility. Only 341 Type 90s were built due to high cost and export restrictions. They were mostly assigned to Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost island, and most likely Cold War invasion point. By the early 2000s, new threats required a different kind of tank. The Type 10, introduced in 2012, was lighter, 44 tons, faster, and smarter than its predecessors. It used an indigenous 120mm smoothbore gun firing Japan-developed, armor-piercing, UV-stabilized discarding sabot rounds. Advanced modular ceramic composite armor allowed rapid roll changes and easy upgrades. Powered by a 1,200-horsepower Mitsubishi 8VA diesel engine paired with a continuously variable transmission, it offered smooth, precise maneuvering. Its networked command, control, communication, computers, and intelligence C4I system integrated the tank into the modern digital battlefield, coordinating with drones, infantry, and command centers in real time. With a top speed of over 70 km/h and enhanced mobility, the Type 10 was built for Japan's terrain and evolving defense doctrine. From the ashes of surrender to the dawn of a new millennium, Japan's tanks were never forged for conquest, but for defense. Steel guardians standing silent watch over a pacifist nation. Each machine, from the humble Type 61 to the refined Type 74, the powerful Type 90, and the elegant Type 10, carries the spirit of a modern samurai, built not to strike first, but to endure adapt, and protect. In their armor lives the soul of a nation that remembers the cost of war and swears with quiet strength never to forget.